2, 3.
That was Erin Sauls in much happier times during a gender reveal with her boyfriend. Now she's accused of murdering an 8-month-old baby boy in her care. I look at this heartbreaking case out of Arkansas and where Erin Sauls is now. I'm Angenette Levy, and this is Crime Fix. You know, there's a reason that Morgan & Morgan is America's largest personal injury law firm. It's because the firm fights for its clients and wins a lot. The firm has more than 1,000 lawyers that have recovered $25 billion from more than 500,000 clients. Just in the last few months, a client in Florida got $12 million when the insurance company offered just $350,000. In Pennsylvania, another client won $26 million. That was 40 times the insurer's offer. Morgan & Morgan makes it really easy to fight for what you deserve. You can even start a claim from your phone. So if you are ever injured, you can start a claim at forthepeople.com/crimefix. Click the link below or scan that QR code that you see right there on your screen. There is a family in Arkansas that is starting the new year in unimaginable grief and pain. The Flowerdays' 8-month-old son, Elijah, is dead, and Little Rock police detectives say his babysitter is to blame. The case started on Tuesday, December 30th. It was just after 11 a.m. when police were called to a home on Clifton Drive because a baby boy was not breathing. That is not normal. The boy was Elijah Flowerday. His family posted this photo of the sweet baby boy online. A Little Rock Police Department report states, Ms. Sauls was running an in-home daycare when an 8-month-old quit breathing. The infant was taken to Arkansas Children's, where he was pronounced deceased. The child sustained a skull fracture and multiple brain bleeds. Sauls admitted to striking the infant's head 3 times against the hardwood floor during a diaper change, where she was frustrated. Now, because of this admission that detectives claim that Erin Sauls made to them, she was charged with capital murder. This is the most serious charge a person can face in the state of Arkansas. The capital murder charge can mean a lot of things, including committing a murder with more than one person or while committing a murder while committing another crime, such as rape or kidnapping. But in this case, it's because of Elijah's age. He was a baby, just 8 months old, totally defenseless. So if an adult kills someone younger than 14 in Arkansas, that can be a capital murder charge, and that can be pursued by prosecutors. And because this is a capital charge, the prosecutor could pursue the death penalty. And it's not clear whether that will happen in this case or not. Erin Sauls, at this point, has pleaded not guilty to the charge. This is very, very early on in this case. And at least one parent who had sent their children to Sauls' daycare is absolutely reeling from the news of Elijah's death. The mother shared the Little Rock Police Department's Facebook post about Sauls' arrest, writing, I just can't stop looking at this. My babies went to her in August for a couple of weeks, and we decided to go back to her in October. Didn't stay long because she wasn't reliable. I've been crying just looking at this. A lot of ifs. R.I.P. little baby with a sad emoji face. But truly no one is more sad and more devastated than baby Elijah's family. Elijah's father, Isaac, posted about his son's death on Facebook, writing, Everyone who has heard Elijah has passed away. That is true. We appreciate your prayers and support, but I have to ask everyone to stay off of social media about it. The more it gets out there and word gets lost in translation, the worse chance there is for justice to be served. So anyone who has posted anything, please take it down. Trinity and I are dealing with enough right now. We do not need news calling us and twisting the truth. The police have everything under complete control and have a confession. But the more details that get out, the worse the case has to be closed. So again, please take down anything regarding Elijah at this point. If you have evidence against Erin Sauls or anything like that, reach out to the local sheriff's office and they will get justice served. Respectfully to everyone, please keep Elijah out of this. It's being handled. The best way you can help is reporting to the police and praying for us in this difficult time. This is so incredibly sad. The Flowerdays are not planning for their baby boy's future. Instead, they are raising money for his funeral. A GoFundMe has raised more than $14,000 at the time of this recording. The organizers of that GoFundMe wrote, Isaac Flowerday and his family are facing an unimaginable loss after the passing of their beloved baby boy, Elijah. This tragedy has left Isaac, Trinity, and their son heartbroken as they grieve the loss of their son and their little brother. The days ahead will be incredibly difficult as they try to find comfort and healing together as a family. During this time, the family is in need of support to help cover funeral expenses, allow Isaac and Trinity to take time off work to be with each other and their son, and to access counseling services that can help them cope with their grief. The financial burden of these needs can be overwhelming, especially while they are trying to process such a profound loss. We are reaching out to ask for your kindness and support for Isaac, Trinity, and any contribution, no matter the size, will help ease their burden and show them that they are not alone in this difficult journey. Your generosity will be deeply appreciated as they honor Elijah's memory and begin to heal as a family. So I want to bring in Russell Button of the Button Law Firm. They specialize in daycare cases and child injury cases. Russell, this is every parent, I can say as a parent, every parent's worst nightmare. You drop your child off, especially a baby who is defenseless at a daycare, and you are hoping and you're trusting that the person you're dropping your child off with is going to care for and love your child as much as you do.
Yeah, this is absolutely heartbreaking. It's senseless. And honestly, the first word that comes to mind is betrayal. And I saw what the other parents at this same daycare said, and that was the same thing. And we hear that in all of our cases. It's just flat out betrayal, sadness, disappointment, because it should have never happened. Period, hands down. Unfortunately, we see these cases when children are seriously injured or killed at daycare far too often.
And I'm trying to figure out, you can never, sadly, end these things altogether. Mm-hmm. But I'm wondering, if there are things, we can't turn back what happened to poor baby Elijah and his family. I mean, that baby was a beautiful baby. My God, I just can't even believe it. But could there have been maybe some red flags, or could parents learn from this? We saw the one parent who commented she was becoming unreliable, so I just couldn't take my child there anymore. So maybe there was something going on with this woman that Isaac's parents didn't know. Maybe they didn't have any other options. Maybe they had a good experience with her up to this point. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, all in all, the clients that come to us when something really tragic happens, they're all the same parents that have to leave their children at daycare because they're working, they're providing for their family, they're doing everything they can, and they just want something better for their child. They want them to be loved, to be nurtured, and returned just as safe and healthy as when they dropped them off. And so when we start with that, these parents, they dropped their little 8-month-old off, and they expected that this caregiver was going to protect them when he couldn't protect themselves, and they weren't there. And we know that that's not what happened. So looking back, what can we see? What can we identify that needs to be done differently, or, parents can look out for? The first thing in this sort of situation that we noticed was how many kids was this caregiver watching? And what it seemed like is it started off with just one child or one family's children, which is more like a babysitting situation, right?
Right.
And as opposed to an at-home daycare with multiple children with one person that's responsible for everything at their house. So that is really probably the initial factor, is if you're going to put your kid in somebody's at-home daycare, are they licensed or are they unlicensed? That's a critical component. They have a choice to be licensed. If they choose not to be licensed, that's a big red flag. The next thing is, how many kids are there? Are we talking a babysitting situation where you're just replacing a parent, an adult figure, or are we talking a true daycare with one person? That's usually going to be trouble. And do they have cameras in the home? Right? If they don't have cameras, especially ones that are fixed and can't be manipulated and have audio, those are big things. Those will help you as a parent make better decisions. And those are just some of them that we notice in this case.
So one person running a daycare at home, that's not really, you could be licensed to do that, but that's not really a daycare, per se. That's more, you're calling it a babysitting situation. And that's maybe something you'd want to try to avoid unless you know the person really, really well.
Yeah, I mean, it goes hand in hand, right? So at these at-home daycares, like I said, they have a choice to be licensed versus unlicensed.
Right.
And that is state by state, and there are different requirements. At these at-home daycares, if it's just a one adult and one or two children, you're talking babysitting. They're
Right.
likely not going to be licensed. And that is absolutely going to be its own set of safety versus risk and rewards. We see a lot of problems at these at-home daycares when they are not licensed and they have multiple children and they're not putting the safety mechanisms in place that a licensed facility daycare would, with a lot of structure, with a lot more people to keep eyes on them, that they are made child-proofed as opposed to somebody's house. They have actual insurance policies that cover injuries and wrongful death, where they have to also meet the insurance company's requirements to keep something safe, as opposed to an at-home daycare. So we see a lot of trouble with these at-home daycares consistently across the board.
I'm guessing, this is just a wild guess on my part, and I think I'm probably right, and I'm guessing this woman was not licensed and did
Correct.
not have insurance.
That's what we've seen. Yeah. I'll take the license part. From what we can tell, she was unlicensed. I don't represent any of the families in this case, so I don't specifically have firsthand knowledge of whether or not she was licensed or not from the state. And sometimes these at-home daycares, they will get licensed and then they decide, you know what, that's too much red tape to go through.
Right.
I don't want to do this licensing anymore, and nobody's looking over my shoulder. So it's one of our missions in our daycare and child injury at our firm here to make a requirement that if you're going to be more than a babysitter, you have to be licensed. And the second one on that is to have an insurance policy. On these cases, a lot of times they may have a homeowner's policy. If they're operating at a rental property, maybe they have a renter's insurance policy. But if they're doing more than babysitting, they're typically running a business. And do they have insurance? If they don't, it's no different. The analogy I always give to parents is that's like an uninsured driver driving on our roads, right? They're an uninsured daycare operating and responsible for your pride and joy, our next generation, and that's just a recipe for failure typically.
I want to talk now about the specific allegations in this case. The police, according to the report, have a confession. That's the claim. And they claim that Erin Sauls said that she was changing Elijah's diaper. She got frustrated. She had a headache and she slammed his head against a hardwood floor. Every parent gets frustrated. If you've ever babysat, you can get frustrated. I don't know what causes that level of frustration changing a diaper of an 8-month-old. I mean, it's like walk away for a few minutes, put the baby in the crib and walk away, if you can't handle it, and calm yourself down. But that's a really awful thing. And she's charged with capital murder. They could pursue the death penalty in this case, and they may. We just don't know what the prosecutor will decide. But this sounds like a very, just a horrific thing to do to a defenseless baby over becoming frustrated and then having a headache.
We see it time and time again. And it doesn't matter if it's a babysitting situation, an at-home daycare with one person, just like this case, or even at a licensed facility. These caregivers, some are really great. Some are awesome, and they love these children, and you want them to be involved with your child. And then others, they may be in it for the wrong reasons. They're just trying to get a check. They're trying to have a 9 to 5. Here, it seemed like she was a daycare worker. She had her own child. She was doing it more like a babysitting, and then they start to put profits over safety, and they start adding kids without understanding the risk that comes with that. You've got multiple little active toddlers and infants that you're responsible for. Who's not going to be overwhelmed? That's like one parent and 10 little kids that are just running around that you got to do everything for: feed, change their diapers, and also supervise them. So when you're mixing ages, you got multiple kids, we see them getting overwhelmed in every setting. And that's what's really scary about this situation. And that was the most alarming part, is if you're going to do this, if you're going to be responsible for kids, do it right. And here at these at-home daycares, and this is something for parents out there everywhere, whether it's a babysitting situation or an at-home daycare, you want to make sure what is in place there if the person that's responsible gets overwhelmed, because it could happen and it's going to happen. Is there another adult And do you know that person? Have they informed you of who that person is? Do they have somebody they can phone a neighbor real quick to come over and give them a break, like you had mentioned, just step away from the situation? So what's in place at these daycares to make sure when you have an overwhelmed caregiver, what's the buddy system? What's going to help prevent anything like this from ever happening? But let's make sure we're very clear about this. No amount of being overwhelmed or frustrated with a child in any way, shape, or form should this ever happen. A child should never be repeatedly slammed down, no matter how frustrated and overwhelmed you are as a parent or an adult. It should just never happen. So
no doubt,
even those safety protocols being put in place, this should never have happened.
What recourse do the parents have? I mean, obviously there's accountability being pursued through the criminal courts. But they could file a civil suit. But I'm assuming Ms. Sauls is not somebody of means, and I'm guessing there was no insurance. So what recourse do they have aside from the criminal courts?
Yeah, what options do these parents have is one of the big ones we get all the time. I mean, we're handling several wrongful death cases, tragically now, involving similar facts and similar scenarios. And some of them, they do have insurance. Some of them, they do have families that have, means and stuff, and they can pay for something to at least put a name to it and help us get some answers. But when we see these cases, criminal cases are all about punishing individuals. That is 100% what they're about, the actual individual. And that's going to happen here. It's on its way. These investigations take a long period of time. So it's going to be a long way down the road. But that's for her. That's for the owner and director that did this, the murder charge, etc. The state investigation, each state has its own child care licensing and abuse and neglect agencies. They're going to investigate this. She's going to be blacklisted. It's going to have different facts and findings that she can't ever be around children again, let alone a daycare, but she's not allowed to be around children again. It's going to impact a lot of different things, as it should. And so the state does their own independent investigation. And then the third prong of these is the civil case. And that's what we represent these families in. We help them in these others, but we don't control that. The civil cases, what their options are, if there's no insurance or if there's limited insurance opportunities through a homeowner's policy or something like that, or a renter's policy, depending on what kind of home she was operating out of, and she doesn't have any assets, a civil case here would really be about sending a message to other folks out there operating in this sort of risky format, and to go and get answers still, but to mainly send a message and make sure, hey, this should never happen. And if you are going to be operating as a babysitter or an at-home daycare or even a licensed facility, you better make sure you put the safety things in place so that what happened to this family doesn't happen to anybody else that you're responsible for. And so that's really what we try to do here in these sorts of situations in a civil case, is we pursue any means possible to make sure that it stays on their record, the actual people involved in the facility involved, if it's an LLC, if it's just her in her independent name. We try to make sure that it stays on their record forever and the public knows about it. There's awareness out there about what really happened, because sometimes these things just get swept under the rug or lost among all the other news stories out there.
Yeah, it's horrible. Russell Button of the Button Law Firm, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Angenette. Appreciate you.
And Erin Sauls remains being held in jail. She will be back in court sometime this month, and we'll keep an eye on this case for you. And that's it for this episode of Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. Thanks so much for being with me. I'll see you back here next time.